Welcome! You're listening to the Uncharted Lancaster podcast, where we explore the hidden histories, forgotten places, and long-buried secrets of Lancaster County. Using modern digital storytelling tools, each episode brings a new piece of local lore to life, revealing the strange, the surprising, and the stories history left behind. Let's begin.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We are diving into a huge retail story, but the start of it, it's not really about complex economics. It's about a tiny, fragile, and what was at first considered an utterly useless object.
Exactly. We're in the autumn of 1880, and the setting is Lancaster, Pennsylvania, specifically 25 North Queen Street.
And that address, it's not just a location, it's really the genesis point for a massive global holiday tradition.
It is. It's where modern retail and, the modern Christmas tree truly intersect for the first time on a mass scale.
Absolutely. So Frank W. Woolworth is already a pretty successful, though, let's say an unorthodox shopkeeper in Lancaster at this point.
Right. His whole reputation is built on selling practical, low-cost goods. We're talking about things like sewing needles, thimbles, small hardware.
All fixed at 5 or 10 cents. So he's dealing with traveling salesmen all the time. But on this one day, a German salesman presents him with a box of these glittering, fragile, blown glass baubles.
Yeah, these decorative spheres meant to hang on a Christmas tree. And Woolworth's reaction, which is, it's pretty well documented. It's fantastic because it tells you exactly what his business was built on.
And why this product was such a huge risk for him.
He looked at them and was just completely skeptical.
He wanted to know their utility, right? That was the entire backbone of his inventory.
And the quote is famous. He just asks, "What purpose do they serve? They're literally useless."
I mean, they had no practical application, no function other than just looking nice, which was completely against the whole foundation of his fixed price store model.
They were pure luxury. And previously, they were completely inaccessible luxury.
So here's a man who's built his success on efficiency and practicality, and now he's being offered what is essentially high-cost, fragile glassware.
But Woolworth, for all his skepticism, he agrees to this small, very calculated gamble.
He tells the salesman, "I'll take one box, but only if they can be sold on a sale or return basis." He's not even risking his own capital.
He hedged his bet, basically saying, if they don't sell, you're taking them back.
That is such a critical detail, isn't it? That little safety mechanism.
It is. So he puts these supposedly useless luxury items on open display, probably expecting them to just sit there for weeks, maybe gather some dust.
Especially given the conservative nature of the local shoppers he was catering to. And then history just happens.
Within 1 hour, 60 minutes, every single ornament sells out.
The demand was explosive and, completely unexpected. This immediate rapid-fire success for an affordable decorative item, that was the moment.
That was the birth of the mass market Christmas ornament tradition, a huge cultural pivot, all disguised as one little retail transaction.
And that is exactly why we're here today. We're going to examine how this one specific location, Lancaster, was the crucible for not one, but two huge interlocking retail revolutions.
Right. First, there's the creation and the refinement of the fixed-price 5 and dime store itself, pioneering that whole self-service model we all take for granted. And second, there's this moment we just detailed. The birth of the affordable mass market Christmas ornament tradition.
So we're going to trace the immense ambition of Frank W. Woolworth. Because he didn't just stumble into success. He used Lancaster as his operational proving ground.
A real estate laboratory, even. A place where he could test these major innovations in commerce, in merchandising, and later, even in construction.
And all of these tests, they prepared him for creating a global retail empire, anchored by that enormous Manhattan skyscraper he built just a decade later.
So this deep dive, it really gives you, the listener, a shortcut to understanding the entire origin story of modern discount retail.
Yeah, every time you walk into a big box store or some modern chain, you are experiencing the legacy that began with Woolworth's really radical ideas.
And every time you reach into a box of glass baubles to decorate your tree, you're participating in a tradition that was deliberately, democratized by that very skeptical merchant in a small Pennsylvania town.
So let's start the journey of how a man who openly said he was the world's worst salesman managed to sell more things to more people than anyone before him. It's a story of persistence, perfect timing, and knowing when to pivot.
It really is.
To really get the scale of Woolworth's innovation, we have to go back to 1879 and just look at how retail worked back then. especially the traditional dry goods stores.
They were incredibly archaic. I mean, so inefficient by today's standards. They operated on this principle of rigid hierarchy and mandatory personal assistance.
That's the key contrast. In the 19th century, shopping was this almost formal transaction. The merchandise was definitely not out on display for you to touch or compare.
No, everything was kept behind these long, imposing mahogany or oak counters, often stacked way up high or shelved against the walls where only the clerks could reach them.
So if you, the customer, wanted to buy, say, a spool of thread or a bolt of fabric, you would approach a clerk, probably a stern-looking gentleman, and you'd present them with a list.
You needed help for every single purchase. The entire transaction was dictated by the clerk's speed, their judgment, and their mood, probably.
And the process was slow. It inherently required a lot of staff, and psychologically, it put you, the customer, in this kind of submissive or at least dependent position.
And here's a massive logistical problem. There were often no fixed prices.
Right.
Everything was subject to haggling. Or at the very least, you were relying on the clerk to sort of size you up and decide what price you could afford based on how well dressed you were.
It was fundamentally opaque. And this reliance on the clerk's ability to sell, well, that's exactly where Woolworth saw the system just completely break down.
He saw the inefficiency, he saw the intimidation factor,
Yeah.
and the limitations imposed by needing to constantly interact with sales staff.
And this brings us right back to his famous self-assessment, which is really the psychological cornerstone of his entire empire.
Woolworth often called himself the world's worst salesman. He wasn't charismatic. He wasn't good at that long dance of haggling and persuasion that traditional retail required.
So his solution wasn't to get better at selling. It was this brilliant sidestep. He realized he needed to design a system, a store, where, as he put it, people could sell to themselves.
And that single radical insight self-service, putting merchandise on open tables or shelves where people could actually touch it, that was a revolutionary act.
He was pioneering the physical layout that basically every modern retailer, from a pharmacy to a supermarket, still uses today.
It democratized the whole shopping experience. You could browse, touch, compare, and make decisions without needing permission. And, crucially, by introducing fixed low prices, 5 or 10 cents, he just eliminated the whole awkward ritual of haggling.
The price was marked, it was visible, it was transparent.
But the journey there, it was paved with some quick and probably pretty embarrassing failures.
He had a remarkably undistinguished early career in sales. He was just trying to find that one big idea. And the foundational concept, the 5 and dime, first appeared while he was working as a clerk at a store called Augsbury & Moore in Watertown, New York.
That was his aha moment. He convinced the owners to let him try a special promotion, a 5-cent table. He just took all the odds and ends, the slow-moving items, and priced them all at 5 cents.
And the result was instantaneous. In a single day, he sold $100 worth of that merchandise.
That Watertown precursor, that was his absolute proof of concept. He realized the fixed-price, low-cost model could unlock this huge hidden demand.
So, armed with that successful test, he scraped together enough money and opened his very first solo venture, Woolworth's Great 5-Cent Store in Utica, New York, on February 2010, 1879.
And it was a rapid, painful failure. The Utica store closed in May of 1879, barely 3 months after it opened.
And he learned a crucial lesson there. The idea was sound, but the specific location, the customer demographic,
it
was all wrong.
Right. Utica's population just wasn't responding the way the Watertown experiment suggested they would. So he wisely didn't blame the fixed price idea. He blamed the location.
Which brings us directly to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He needed a fresh start, and more importantly, he needed the right kind of customer.
He was incredibly strategic in his market research, even if it was, a bit rudimentary back then. He studied population data, local economies. He was looking for people who were predisposed to seek out exceptional value.
He knew the population of Lancaster was made up largely of old Anglo-Saxon stock and Germans or Pennsylvania Dutch farming people.
The sources describe his ideal customer as thrifty, conservative, and eager for a bargain. These were people who managed their household budgets tightly. They valued a dollar or a nickel spent wisely way more than they valued some upscale, formal shopping experience.
He believed this demographic would just instantly appreciate the transparent, low-cost model.
So on June 21st, 1879, he opens his second attempt at 170 North Queen Street in Lancaster, and he chose a Saturday on purpose.
But of course, that was the traditional shopping day for the farm families who came into town. He was ensuring maximum foot traffic on his critical opening day.
And the results were far beyond just successful. They were an immediate phenomenon. phenomenon.
I mean, the atmosphere must have been absolutely electric that Saturday night. Woolworth and his 7 clerks sold 30% of their entire stock by closing time that very first night.
30%. I mean, just think about that turnover. That success was the crucial validation. Lancaster wasn't just a successful store. It was the location that definitively proved the whole fixed-price self-service model was viable.
And scalable and deeply profitable. It became his strategic proving ground, the blueprint for everything that came next.
This undeniable success led instantly to the foundation of the empire, though it was, still pretty messy at first.
Yeah, he immediately brought in his brother, Charles Sumner Woolworth, to try and replicate the success elsewhere.
And Charles, he was tasked with managing new locations, but even he struggled at first. He managed a store in Harrisburg that closed pretty quickly after a falling out with the landlord.
And then the York store, which only lasted 3 months. So out of Frank's first 4 stores, Utica, Harrisburg, York, and Lancaster only, Lancaster was this runaway success.
Which just underscores how pivotal Lancaster was. It provided the stability, the cash flow to weather those other 3 failures.
But they kept iterating on it, and the model got more and more refined. The true maturation of the business model really happened when Charles opened the 5 Woolworth Bros store in Scranton, Pennsylvania on November 6, 1880.
That's where they realized the 5-cent price point was just too restrictive. The model, the 5 and 10 store, was fully developed there.
That combination was critical. It let them offer slightly higher quality or, larger merchandise.
They also quickly realized they were much more powerful working together. So this network expanded through what they called the Friendly Rival Syndicate.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of this syndicate, because this is where the genius of his buying strategy really comes into play. This created a technical barrier that local competitors just couldn't overcome.
The syndicate was brilliant. It wasn't one single company at first. It was an affiliated network of 5 and 10 cent stores, founded and run by Frank, his brother Charles, and other close associates like Fred Morgan Kirby.
And they were all operating under their own names, running their own operations, but they shared one massive strategic advantage.
Shared purchasing power.
Exactly. That allowed Frank, who was the real driving force behind the buying trips, to negotiate these massive volume discounts that no single local merchant, not even a regional chain, could ever get.
They were essentially creating an early form of a purchasing cooperative for deep discount goods. So when a manufacturer of, say, thimbles or tin plates got an order for 500,000 units from the Woolworth Syndicate, they offered prices that were impossible for smaller retailers to match.
This kept their costs incredibly low, allowed them to maintain that fixed low price, and it effectively created a competitive moat around the growing Woolworth business.
And this syndicate structure just continued to grow, pooling resources, maximizing inventory, until the landmark corporate merger in 1912.
That's when all 596 of these affiliated stores united into one monolithic corporate entity, the F.W. Woolworth Company.
But it was Lancaster that provided the initial blueprint, the confidence, and, the foundational cash flow that made that entire syndicate machine possible.
Now let's take that foundation of retail efficiency and pivot back to the moment that changed global Christmas traditions forever. We're circling back to that 1880 gamble on the useless glass ornaments in Lancaster.
It's such a fantastic pivot for a man who was obsessed with practicality. By the autumn of 1880, the Lancaster store was already highly profitable. He was successful dealing with high volumes of utilitarian stock.
And these glass ornaments were completely novel. They were totally foreign to his established inventory.
They were perceived as luxury items, which meant they were typically only accessible to the extremely wealthy who could afford hand-blown, delicate imported goods.
The idea that someone could just walk in and buy one for 10 cents must have been mind-boggling at the time.
And that rapid-fire speed of the sales selling out in less than an hour, it proved there was this enormous underserved market just waiting for accessible decorative items.
This wasn't just about finding a popular product. It was identifying a massive cultural need that had previously been just choked off by high prices and limited availability.
Before Woolworth, Christmas tree decoration was a much simpler, more homespun affair. Things like popcorn strings, paper chains, maybe some very expensive, heavy European trinkets if you were wealthy.
Woolworth's decision democratized Christmas tree decoration overnight. He instantly changed the visual iconography of the holiday.
What makes Woolworth unique here is that he immediately recognized the challenge wasn't selling the product. That part was easy. The challenge was securing the supply at a price point that worked for the 5 and dime model.
This is where he stops being a shopkeeper and truly becomes a global buyer, a wholesale titan.
That distinction is crucial. People back then just assumed that buying stock was a routine part of a shopkeeper's stock and trade. You relied on domestic wholesalers.
But Woolworth cut out the middleman entirely. He realized that controlling the cost structure was his greatest competitive advantage.
So he dedicated immense time to buying. He started traveling to Europe twice a year, specifically to spot trends, look for novelties, and, most importantly, deal directly with the factories that produce them.
He was setting up a massive, modern, international supply chain based on enormous volume purchasing.
And the most important of these early buying trips happened in 1881, the year right after that Lancaster success. He traveled directly to the heart of the European ornament industry, Lauscha, Germany.
Lauscha has a deep history. It's known as the birthplace and the home of the world's oldest known blown glass ornament factory, which had been operating since 1830.
And when Woolworth arrived, he didn't ask for a modest sample. He applied the scale of his American ambition to this, German cottage industry.
He went big. Woolworth placed an unprecedented order for 100,000 sets of ornaments.
That was a colossal commitment for the time and for those German manufacturers, and it allowed him to drive the unit price way, way down.
100,000 sets. That number just reflects his instant realization that he had uncovered an entirely new mass market.
This commitment to volume purchasing was the key. It's what allowed him to bring the price of a delicate, imported glass item down to that magic 10-cent price point.
And this single business decision, which all started from that quick sellout at 25 North Queen Street in Lancaster, had profound global cultural impacts that are still visible today.
The democratization was total. By making affordable glass ornaments widely available, he cemented them as an indispensable fixture of the holiday.
And his influence wasn't just American. By 1909, Woolworth brought these same affordable German-sourced ornaments to Britain.
And they immediately caused a sensation upon their introduction there.
So within a generation, the sources confirm, the sight of glittering glass ornaments became synonymous with the Christmas holiday on both sides of the Atlantic. It's a legacy that's hard to overstate.
He took an expensive craft item and transformed it into an essential, affordable, and universally accessible tradition for millions of families. Lancaster gave us both the 5 and dime and the modern Christmas tree.
It's the perfect example of how commercial innovation, driven by the need for low-cost, high-volume inventory, can unintentionally drive massive cultural change.
So let's pivot now from commerce and culture to architecture. Because Woolworth was successful beyond measure, yet he felt this profound social deficiency.
What drove him next wasn't profit. It was status.
This is where the story really shifts from a retail deep dive into more of a psychological profile. Despite revolutionizing commerce and accumulating vast wealth through the syndicate, Frank Woolworth still felt this nagging insecurity rooted in social hierarchy.
It's a deeply human motivation, isn't it? He was a pioneer, a millionaire, the architect of a national chain, yet high society, especially the established East Coast financial elite. They still just saw him as a mere shopkeeper.
And that term, shopkeeper, it carried this derogatory connotation in the late 19th century. It implied someone dealing in small, local transactions. The term he wanted was merchant.
Right, merchants carried far more weight. It implied someone engaged in import-export, financing, visionary development. He wanted to transition his identity from a seller of small things to a builder of large things.
And he was keenly observant about where respect was granted. He noticed that visionary real estate developers were universally respected, and their grand schemes were incredibly lucrative.
So he decided architecture was his path to respectability. He wanted to demonstrate to his syndicate, his suppliers, and the whole world that he was a force to be reckoned with.
So he chose his most cherished location, his operational proving ground, to launch his architectural ambitions, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It held a very special place in his heart.
It was the location that rescued him from that Utica failure. And he decided to replace his small, original, but by then kind of tired store number 1 with something spectacular.
And the process he used to acquire the land for this new monument is just classic Woolworth. Strategic brilliance and a bit of ruthlessness.
The site he targeted was 21 to 27 North Queen Street. Local residents considered this area a slightly run-down spot.
Yeah, the wrong side of the street for any major commercial development. He used this perception to his advantage. Instead of announcing this brand new corporate headquarters and driving up land prices,
he quietly and systematically bought up all the property along that stretch of road using proxies, shell corporations, keeping his final plans an absolute secret to avoid price inflation.
When the entire block was secured, he finally revealed his spectacular vision. He hired C. Emlyn Urban, a noted and highly respected Lancaster architect, to design what he officially titled the Woolworth Building.
But privately, he just called it his skyscraper.
And this was a monumental, elegant structure for Lancaster in 1899. For a smaller Pennsylvania city, its scale was just immense. The sources describe it as a 5, 6, or even 7-story building.
Which highlights its incredible verticality compared to everything else around it. It was pure grand Victorian architecture with gold-domed towers, ornate detailing, and genuine stone gargoyles.
It was designed to make a statement, and it served multiple purposes. The ground floor housed a massive, modern Woolworth flagship store, a showcase of mahogany counters and wide, brightly lit gangways.
But above that retail space were multiple floors of lucrative offices.
And the interior of that flagship store, it was designed to elevate the entire shopping experience. It had those well-appointed mahogany counters and the bright electric lighting that Charles S. Woolworth had pioneered in Scranton.
This wasn't just a bargain store anymore. It fused the efficient, low-cost model with this high-end, modern ambiance.
But the true social engine of the building, and the part that cemented its status as a community hub, was on the roof.
He included these spectacular amenities, most notably a beautiful rooftop garden and an open-air theater offering panoramic views of the city and the surrounding farmland for miles around.
This was revolutionary social development. The rooftop quickly became the social center of the city. It was used for public entertainment, for concerts, often featuring really high-quality acts.
The sources list specific examples, like Charlie Grapeman & Co., Dick and Alice McAvoy, and the Five Noses. These were real vaudeville entertainers, not just local amateurs.
And the design was clever, too. It was built as a suntrack for summer evenings, but it was also engineered so the space could be enclosed and heated as the weather turned colder.
He wanted a year-round gathering place, ensuring the building stayed relevant long after the shopping was done.
And here's the subtle strategic layer. The theater wasn't purely for public entertainment. It also served a corporate function. Woolworth hosted crucial store managers and stockholders meetings there.
Right. It made Lancaster an active, operational heart of the expanding empire, not just a historical footnote. This was his chance to show the men who ran his stores what real ambition looked like.
It was, as you said, explicitly a real estate and architectural laboratory. This entire Lancaster project, the land consolidation, hiring a star architect, the mixed-use development, was the perfect preparation for his greatest feat.
Which was the Manhattan Woolworth building. Commissioned just over a decade later, completed in 1913, designed by Cass Gilbert. It was a pioneering early skyscraper.
It held the title of the tallest building in the world until 1930.
And the final piece of defiance against the high society who called him a shopkeeper. The Manhattan Tower, a symbol of industrial and financial power, was famously and definitively paid for entirely in cash.
A cost exceeding $13 million at the time. A colossal fortune, all generated from 5 and 10 cent sales.
But the ambition, the blueprint, the confidence required to pull off that massive project, the transition from mere retail success to monumental real estate developer, that was all developed right there in Lancaster.
On that supposedly rundown spot on North Queen Street years before.
So the retail concept, refined in Lancaster and then centralized in the New York Tower, it expanded rapidly, dominating the first half of the 20th century. But every retail empire has to adapt, and the five and dime concept itself, it had an expiration date.
It did. For many years, even after Frank Woolworth's death in 1919, the company stuck strictly to that 5 and 10 cent business model. It was partly out of respect for his vision, but, increasingly it became an anchor in a changing economy.
The sources confirmed that market realities, especially rising inflation after World War I and the general pressure of commodity costs, just made it impossible to source quality merchandise while maintaining that strict price cap.
The breaking point came during the Great Depression. In the spring of 1932, they reluctantly added a 20-cent line of merchandise. But that was just a Band-Aid.
Right. By November 1935, the company directors made the painful but necessary decision to discontinue selling price limits altogether. The five and dime was functionally dead. The chain pivoted into being a general discount retailer.
Culturally, the stores continued to evolve, eventually incorporating lunch counters. This was an idea popularized by one of their successful UK stores in Liverpool, actually.
And these weren't just places to grab a quick bite.
No, they became essential cultural fixtures of 20th century America. They were social gathering places, precursors to the modern shopping mall food court, offering accessible, affordable dining.
But here lies a powerful irony in Woolworth's legacy, which was built on this democratized affordability. These lunch counters were often segregated in the American South.
And that profound contradiction led to one of the most historically significant events tied to the company. We have to remember the Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, which became the setting for the 1960s sit-ins.
A pivotal, nonviolent protest against the company's racial segregation policies and a real key turning point in the civil rights movement.
The scale of the company was such that it couldn't avoid being caught in the major social tensions of the time. But despite this massive cultural footprint, the company, facing increasing competition from new chains starting in the 1980s, began its steady decline.
And this decline brought a painful irony to the physical legacy Frank Woolworth left in his beloved Lancaster. Unlike the New York City Tower, which still stands today, that majestic 1899 Lancaster skyscraper.
The monument with the roof garden, the gargoyles, the gold-domed towers, it was not preserved.
It's truly astonishing, given how much that building symbolized his ambition and his transition to merchant. Shortly after World War II in 1950, the F.W. Woolworth Common applied for and received permission to tear down that grand, opulent Victorian structure.
And it was replaced with what the sources dismissively call a more modern, just a bulk standard concrete and glass superstore.
A characterless two-story shell structure. This bland, functional replacement stood on the site until the mass closure of 400 Woolworth operations across the country in 1997.
Which marked the final retreat of the physical dime store footprint.
To me, the physical memory of Woolworth's revolutionary beginnings is almost completely erased from the Lancaster streetscape. The original shop at 170 North Queen Street is now part of the Lancaster Square development.
And the site of that incredible 1899 skyscraper at 2127 North Queen Street is currently occupied by an expansion of Fulton Bank. The footprint of his genius has been absorbed and overwritten by the very processes of commerce he helped to unleash.
And the final act of corporate transformation marked the ultimate end of the F.W. Woolworth retail identity. Facing unstoppable competition, the company made a strategic and eventually total pivot to its growing sporting goods division.
That pivot was absolute. In July 1997, the company renamed itself the Venator Group. By 2001, the focus was exclusively on sporting goods and athletic retail, leading to the name we all know today, Foot Locker, Inc.
They even formally changed their recognizable ticker symbol from the initial Z, finally breaking the corporate links to the five and dime concept entirely.
It's the death of the dime store, surviving only in name through the parent company's assets. And if we look at the most recent corporate history in the sources, we see that evolution continuing.
Right, reflecting the competitive pressures of retail today. Foot Locker is slated to become a subsidiary when it's acquired by rival company Dick's Sporting Goods in 2025.
That trajectory is the ultimate irony, isn't it? An empire that started with 5-cent sewing needles and imported glass ornaments, a business built on thrift and novelty, ends up focused entirely on high-priced athletic shoes and equipment.
The core retail idea survived, but the product lines are just unrecognizable from those Lancaster beginnings.
This deep dive really illustrates the duality and just the sheer force of Frank W. Woolworth's genius, and all of it is rooted in that testing laboratory of Lancaster.
He simultaneously revolutionized how people shopped with fixed prices, open display, self-service, and transformed what they bought for tradition with the democratized, affordable glass ornament.
Lancaster was truly his operational and spiritual proving ground. It was the one location that proved the fixed price concept was viable for scalability. And critically, it was the location he chose to flex his muscle as a visionary real estate developer.
He didn't just want profit. He used both commerce and architecture to demand recognition and to elevate his standing beyond that scorned title of shopkeeper.
And think about that drive for recognition and the strategic foresight. The fact that Woolworth systematically bought up property in what was considered a rundown spot.
Because he believed so fundamentally in that location's potential to host his grand architectural vision. He didn't just build a store, he created a community center, a showplace, a monument to the possibility of moving from modest beginnings to immense power.
He took a profound leap of faith on a location and an idea fixed prices that had failed miserably for him in Utica. He needed a specific kind of consumer, the thrifty, conservative population of Lancaster, to validate his idea.
But then he combined those small, successful steps with unprecedented global buying power and immense architectural ambition to create something truly lasting.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought, connecting this incredible history of Lancaster directly to the present day.
The fixed-price, low-cost model that Woolworth pioneered was often severely criticized in the early 20th century because it drove out smaller, local, often higher-priced merchants.
If modern discount giants in big box stores face that very same fundamental criticism today, that tension between accessible low price and the impact on local community, what does that tell us about the ongoing, never-ending tension in retail?
Is this tension a fundamental, cyclical aspect of commerce that simply shifts in scale? F.W. Woolworth first successfully codified that challenge in Lancaster over a century ago.
Something to consider next time you walk through those big automatic doors and realize you're standing in the legacy of a man who figured out how to make you sell things to yourself.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Uncharted Lancaster podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating or review wherever you listen. It really helps more people discover the show. For more fascinating local history, visit unchartedlancaster.com. And if you'd like to go deeper, check out one of Adam Zern's books at unchartedlancaster.com/books. Until next time, keep exploring.